Hey there, it's Kathleen Jasper, and today I'm going to be going over how to reteach concepts after you've given an assessment and you see that some students have not mastered the concept. Let's get started. All right, so last week I did a video about how to use assessments to make instructional decisions, and you can watch that either in the description below. I have the link, or up here somewhere, click and I'll link it up. But in that particular video, I talked about how assessments should only be used to measure mastery and then to reteach and make instructional decisions in the classroom. And I got some comments from that were perfect pieces of data for me to show you how to do that. So one of the people who watched this channel, Dorothy Lover 474, thank you so much for commenting, said, very nice points. Can you give specific examples of how to go back and reteach? Now, I'm definitely going to do that, but I want to talk about this comment really quickly because this is like my data point. This is my assessment to show me that I did not explain thoroughly enough in my previous video how to do that. And so now I'm going back and reteaching you guys who are watching this today, those points. And this is what happens all the time to us as teachers. We kind of have it in our head what we're going to teach, and we have our own knowledge. Like we know about what we're teaching for the most part. There's been plenty of times I've had to teach something I had no idea what I was doing, and I'm sure you've been in that situation as well. But when we're teaching the content that we know a lot about, we kind of have almost a bias in that we think everybody kind of knows what we're talking about. And that happens to me too on this channel. I start talking about assessments. I start talking about fundamental reading skills. I start talking about math skills or whatever. And I kind of forget that there are brand new teachers coming to this channel who don't understand that lingo yet. And so I really love this comment by one of the people who watched the video who's like, okay, great. Thank you for these points, but how do I do that? And so that gives me an opportunity to use that data and now drill down and talk more about how to do that. All right. So make sure you go back and watch the previous video on assessments. I'll just do a quick recap. So let's say that you have given an assessment, and I'm just going to use a multiple choice assessment here because it's the easiest one, but it could be any assessment. It could be a reading assessment. It could be a math assessment. It could be a writing essay, something to have a look at student writing samples. It can be any assessment. And let's say that a group of students got the same question wrong. So this has happened to me plenty of times in the science classroom. I was a science teacher for high school. And let's just say number 5, 12 kids got it wrong. Well, and in my mind, I thought I went over that concept. And I'm sure many of you have said this to your students if you're teaching already, or many of you have heard this. Guys, we went over this. Why did you guys all miss number 12? We went over this time and time again. Well, you may have gone over it time and time again, which I have done, but something wasn't there. There was not a connection made. And so a lot of students didn't meet that criteria when you assess them with the multiple choice assessments. So there's a couple ways in which you can go back and reteach. First, if a lot of students missed it, then it wouldn't hurt to do just a quick whole group instruction on it. So let's say you pass back the tests and you're going through it and you're talking about the different things, and you see number 12 is like a bunch of kids missed it, and say, all right, enough of you have missed this. Let's stop and really go back over this. And so you can pull that problem up on the board, and to differentiate between the kids who got it and the kids who didn't, you could even ask the kids who got it to explain, how did you come to this answer? How did you study for it? What keywords in the question led you to the correct answer? Can you say more about that? And what that does is it gives the kids who did not get it an opportunity to listen to their peers explain it. And often, sometimes the students will explain it better than you can as the teacher because they have that kind of new knowledge about it and a way to remember it, maybe that you didn't teach. And so that's great. And it also gives the students who got it, who understand the concept, an opportunity to demonstrate their mastery and help out their fellow students. And it's also a good way for you to just kind of sit back and say, all right, Susie, you got it correct. Tell me why you got it correct. Can you explain your process of getting to the correct answer for everyone? You might even have her come to the board or stand up if she's comfortable with that. There are several ways in which you can do that. So that's kind of like a whole group approach. A bunch of kids missed this question. We're going to stop, go over it together as the entire class. And I would say enough kids have to have missed that in order to justify a whole group instruction on it. Otherwise, if only one kid missed it or two kids missed it, then you're kind of wasting a whole group session on just two students where you could do a small group with those students and really focus in on their skills. And I'll get to that in just a second. All right. So the next scenario, let's say that I gave a multiple choice test and 5 students missed a group of multiple choice problems that have to do with, let's just say, photosynthesis, the process of photosynthesis in plants. Okay. And you can tell by their scores that this particular standard they didn't get. Maybe they missed 3 or 4 questions that are all related to that photosynthesis standard. All right. And the way you would do that is kind of really dig down. We call that disaggregating the data and having a look and saying, okay, so Jose missed numbers 1, 3, 4, and 5. Susie missed numbers 1, 4, and 5. Sally missed 2, 3, 4, and 5. And maybe those first 5 questions are all about photosynthesis. So you've got a group of kids, let's just say 2 to 5 kids who really missed that benchmark there. This is how you would go back and reteach those students. Now, the rest of the students got it. So you don't want to pull them back and have them go over a concept that they've already mastered. So what you can do is, before you start the lesson, you can have an anchor activity. And an anchor activity is usually used to anchor the number of students who are kind of on level or who have gotten the concept and they're good, and you give them something to do. And while they are doing that anchor activity, you are taking those 2, 3, 4, 5 students, pulling them out, sitting in a small group with them and going over that photosynthesis standard or those questions. You may take out the textbook again and go through that, whatever it is. Now, here's the deal. With an anchor activity, it's not a great idea to do a cooperative learning activity at this time, meaning, okay, I'm going to have my kids who understood the concept do group work or cooperative learning. The reason why is because you are going to be working with these 5 other kids intently. You're not going to be up walking around the room, which is necessary for good cooperative learning. Kids tend to get off task during group work if the teacher is not walking around and kind of monitoring what is happening. That's just kind of the way it is. Now, you might have a class that does group work so well that you can do that. But I would say, in my experience, for the most part, I can't just say, okay, guys, you're going to do cooperative learning while I go over here with these students. Because while I'm over here with the 5 students who missed the concept, my cooperative learning groups are talking about the party on Friday night, talking about the gossip that's going on in the school. They're not doing the activity. So for an anchor activity, I recommend something individual that the students will work on. Now, typically, if you just gave a chapter test and that's what you're going to be working with this small group on, those, couple of questions on that chapter test that they didn't get, more than likely you're moving on to the next chapter, right? So the anchor activity would probably be introducing those kids who got the concept on that multiple choice test that you gave into the new concepts on the new chapter. So you might say, okay, I'm going to have you guys read pages, 323 to 325 in the new chapter. I want you to write down any questions you have. Remember, this is the beginning of the unit, beginning of the chapter, so you're not going to understand everything, and that's okay. So as you read, write down some questions you have for me, identify key vocabulary, whatever it is, that will help them anchor in and do that activity. And I recommend individual work for that. That way you don't have a lot of interaction among students, which then can turn into socializing and everything else. And while you're sitting trying to differentiate with your small group, you're having to say, hey, knock it off. Hey, stop that. Hey, are you done? Because that interrupts your small group intensive that you're trying to do. And another thing you want to make sure you do when you're using that anchor activity with the larger group of students is you want to be very explicit about what they are required to do. You can't just say, open up your textbooks, read pages 323 to 325 and answer the questions. You should probably have it written on the board, a checklist, something where the students can go down the line and say, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do first. This is what I'm supposed to do next. This is what I'm supposed to do third. The reason why is you're kind of releasing these kids on their own. They need explicit instructions on what to do. Otherwise, it could be very chaotic. Once you know the students have exactly what they need in order to complete the anchor activity, then you can remove yourself from the whole group and go to the small group for some more intensive learning with that small group of students. All right, so we took care of our big group of kids. They're going to work on the anchor activity. Now it's time for us to remove ourselves from the whole group and go with our small group of students and focus on that standard that they missed. So now I'm kind of in a little group, maybe in the back of the room, maybe we've got a little circle of desks. And now we go over that standard. Very simple. You can pull the problems back up from the test, really dissect them. For each thing, you could go back into the textbook. You could rework that and talk about it. You could have a diagram that you're working on to walk them through maybe a process or the visuals or whatever it is. Maybe it was the fact that the problem itself had a lot of reading to do. Maybe it was a big, long scenario problem that they didn't quite understand. Maybe you break that down. It just depends on what the type of question or questions were that they missed. Now, it may just take one time that you do that. You may do that, for 10, 15 minutes, and they're like, okay, I get it now. And they're good. And you might assess quickly by observation or by some quick questioning, and you feel like they've understood it. Or it may be that you discovered that 2 out of the 5 kids really need some more intense learning. Well, that's more data you just collected where you can work more intensely with those 2 students. So that's how you would work small group. Lots of ways to work in small group, lots of things to do. That's what I would do if I noticed that a group of students did not get a certain concept or master a certain standard from the multiple choice data. All right, so now we're done with the small group, but now we have a bit of a fragmented class, right? We have the small group kids who've been working on photosynthesis or whatever concept they didn't get. And then we have the rest of the group that's already started the new chapter. So how do we bring the small group of kids back into the whole group and get everybody back, hopefully, probably not, but as much as we can on the same level? But one way in which you can do it is go over what you gave the whole class to do explicitly, talk through it, maybe even reread what you had the kids do on their own. They read it on their own. They may have tons of questions. They may not have gotten it at all. So maybe now you do a read aloud, think aloud. So now the whole class is working through that. That's a way to bring the small group back into the whole group and make sure everybody is caught up so you can then move into the rest of the chapter. All right, so I hope that helps. Remember, you can use all types of differentiation, and I'll do more videos on that. Please continue to send me questions like this particular person did. It really helps me to get ideas of what to film next, and it gives me the data I need to differentiate my instruction on this YouTube channel. I hope you have a great day.